Thank you very much, Madam, for this opportunity, and thank you very much, colleagues who are listening to this auspicious occasion I've been presented with to discuss and talk about myself. I've accepted this invitation to be on this platform. I've listened and followed this platform for a very long time, and I found it to be one of those very, very educative platforms with good contributions coming from the various colleagues who are on this platform. Your first question to me, obviously, it's about being a political character who could be liked and disliked in equal measure. That's politics. You can never please everybody. You can be good. You can be all things to all people. And I think this obviously is a democratic process, a democratic right for citizens and for colleagues to value the individual in the manner that they see or deem fit. But my background, I was born and bred in Mandarin district. I was born on the 23rd September 1970 to a very humble family. Josiah Kasukuwere and Gladys Nimarodza Kasukuwere was my mother. Were 8 of us. We lost one who was supposed to be the 9th. We grew up in a very Christian family. My dad was a member of the Apostolic Faith Church, and so basically we grew up in a polygamous family. It so happened that it was only my mother who had the blessing of having a family. The other two of our mothers, unfortunately, we lost our brothers and sisters that they had brought out of the world when they were just at infant level. We grew up with many other contemporaries, went to a local school, primary school called Junior Primary School up to grade 3, where I could proceed because of the war. I left the junior school and then went to Harare. This is 79. And basically for that whole year, I only went to school for 1 term in grade 3. And after that, I was now selling tomatoes, onions. I became virtually a street kid, living in the township of Zarasekwa and Affield. But most of the selling was in Gelnam, Zarasekwa. After that period as well, I then went to Mofu Government School in 1980, very briefly. This was now after our father, who had gone into the liberated zones. Our father had been taken by the war veterans into some of the liberated areas, owing to his massive contribution to the struggle, raising resources, clothing, and so forth for the struggle. They felt he was very exposed should he continue living in Chiunye protected village. We were living in the protected village. And because the war had intensified in 79, Gore Masimbawano, Gore Gukuraund, and so forth, we had to be shipped to Harare. We were pretty young. Our father had got a small property for us in Highfields, 5327. We stayed there, crammed in a room. We had 2 rooms. One room was for a lodger. So basically, it was a tight one. You slept anywhere between the corridors, next to the toilet, under the sink, and so forth, because we also stayed with my sister, who had just been married, and the husband, our mothers, and so forth. It was a tough situation. But that is what I'm sure many families have gone through as well. Our dad was a businessman. He had run successful businesses before, and this age caught up with him. As you would appreciate, most of the African enterprises, they tend to suffer. But when we came in with a decent education, we went to Mofo, like I said, just for a couple of months, and thereafter went back to the rural village and joined junior primary school, where again I proceeded for my grade 4 until I finished my primary school, and then went to start my secondary school at Bradley Institute, which was a Salvation Army Institute. We were taught by the Salvation Army. After Bradley Institute, in 1988, I worked briefly for Mikrus in Harare as a stock controller. And after that, I was recruited and joined the intelligence department, the president's office. And we started obviously with the training program. And after training, I was deployed to Manicaland province, where I became one of the young officers. And this was during the Renamo banditry attacks and infiltration into Zimbabwe. I was deployed in Manicaland to Mutare, and immediately when I got to Mutare, our bosses immediately dispatched us into the front line, where we saw service in the Pema Valley area, Wonde Valley area, and eventually we've been deployed in the what we call the Special Task Force, STF Chimoyo, to basically undertake operations along the Beira corridor, or from Beira all the way to Zimbabwe, protecting the pipeline, protecting some of the vital economic installations which were along the way. Quite a lot of learning. It wasn't easy. Quite a number of occasions we came through very difficult situations with the enemy, and yeah, just like anybody in war, some survive, some die. We're lucky that some of us and other comrades were able to survive and be able to share and give testimony to what we went through. And it was during that period as well that we met quite a number of the young officers in the army, who many of them today are in senior leaders of the army, generals and so forth. We worked very closely together in the corridor operations, internal as well as external. So I would say these are some of the tribulations, the challenges, the experiences that shaped my life. And after a couple of years in the service, after the war in Mozambique, after having successfully gone also into Gorongosa and met with Tlakama, disguised as a journalist, I thought it was time to hang up my boots. In this game, you must understand how far you've gone, what's the height of your success. So an intelligence officer will tell you that they need to exploit or have one huge exploit, which you can always talk about later. And once you've done that, you must be prepared to pay giveaway and also step down. And I did exactly that. I was still very young, but I immediately embarked on the business, to set up a business, and I then built my transport company in Mutare. It started off as Migdal Holdings, Mountain Transport, became Mountain Coal, bought commercial transport, bought another company from Chiangwa, Johnson Motor Corporation in Kwekwe, and we spread. We bought UTC Touring Company. We formed a bank, Genesis Bank, became a major shareholder of Mazoe Citrus Estates, Interfresh, became a major shareholder again of Mowe Industries. Quite a significant shares. We held about 5 to 10% shareholding in National Tire Services, and many other investments that we did, pioneered the setting up of the export processing zones. And I would say these are some of the things that I did, shaped by the experiences, the good and bad. When I left the intelligence industry and went into business, this is almost at the same time that the affirmative action movement, the indigenization processes, was topical. And it's an area where I contributed heavily. I felt very strongly that we needed to participate, we needed to drive the growth of our own economy. Myself, Philip Chiangwa, Peter Pamire, Golan Devele, Webster Shamu, and many others came together and gave birth to the Affirmative Action Group. We had felt that the Indigenous Business Development Center, IBDC, had kind of lost its clout. It was set up by Strive Masiwa, John Mapondera, and Clement Siziba, and then taken over. Kamshinda, then the old men, Ben Mcheche, continued to run it. But we felt strongly that a lot had to be done, and more aggression was required if we were going to bring about the change that we thought would be necessary if the economy was really to move into the hands of the blacks. And by then, I already earned my nickname Tyson for aggression. Tyson because I think I was kind of a heavy puncher then. We pushed very hard in business to get our own people into the economy. And it's my very strongly held view that we must be masters of our own destiny. We must really control our resources. We must be able to control our own economies, and if need be, expand beyond our own territory, conquer territories beyond our country, and do whatever we can to grow our business and grow our national economy. And in the same vein, I went back to study. Initially, I went to the University of Zimbabwe to study for a diploma in oil and strategic studies. This was with quite a lot of the middle leadership of the army, and the General Nawashe was my studying partner. We used to drive every day back to his office or to his house, and it was also a time where I learned quite a lot of what had happened during the struggle. He was like a mentor to me, who taught me quite a lot. We did together a diploma in defense and strategic studies. And after that, I then, again, after becoming a member of parliament, minister of youth, enrolled at the University of Zimbabwe for my bachelor's degree in political science. After political science, I successfully also completed a master's in international relations, and again went back to university to study for a law degree, which was cut short in 2017. I came back, pursued my program for quite some time, until again the authorities obviously accused the then Chief Magistrate Guamombe of having brought us into the ministerial precinct to work, yet it was really a University of Zimbabwe, a position that all students were going to be given attachment. I worked alongside other colleagues who have just graduated now, but after some time I left the country when it became very difficult to operate, let alone when you have to deal with trumped-up charges, police charges. It became unnecessary, especially with the pain, with the humiliation, with the imminent danger that there was just more to it than what would meet your eye. And one of the things that really concerned me was interference in my own legal defense. I'd had Jonathan Samkange, and he was brought under tremendous pressure to drop his agency, and there were demonstrations. There was subtle political pressure. There was the PB meeting discussing a similar issue. There was quite high-level interference in why Jonathan Samkange should represent me, and to a point where reluctantly he stepped down. And this was now after the 23rd of September, on the second round. The first one, I was charged and acquitted. Second round, again charged, but during the process, they interfered with the lawyer. But I then had to hire Charles Chinyama, who did the best that he could, and also Advocate Magwaliba, who then took up the case until the case was dismissed. And by then, I was in South Africa. The case was, the charges were quashed and dismissed by the High Court. And the famous locus classicus on the exception charges, it's now quite a very important piece of our legislation, quoted in many of the cases that are brought before the courts. My father, like I said earlier on, was a devout member of the Joan Maranga Apostolic faith. My father was born in the early 1914. Was unfortunate in that he had his children, that is us and my sisters and so forth, quite late in his life. He was quite advanced now, over 40 years, when he started having a family that was able to survive. My eldest sister was born in 1959. Sarah, she and my genial father is born 1914, and your first child is born 1959, which is my sister. He did very well. He was the first man to build a shopping area in the Mount Darwin area, and up to this plate day, it's called Kwajosia. This is a famous place in the Chesa area. He worked very closely with a lot of the new settlers who were coming in from various districts going to Chesa areas. They were opening up the Chesa farming communities. He was there. They would store their goods with him. He had lots of stories of people who came from Gutu, people who came from Wedza, people who came, almost most of the families and people who are settled in the Chesa area passed through his complex, and there are good stories that he would always tell us about the various groupings of people who came in to settle in the Mount Darwin district. Not a lot is talked about him. Obviously, my dad passed on early 2001, 2002, thereabout, 2001, yeah. That's when we lost him. Then we remained with our mom, and we had lost earlier on my father's first wife, died before my dad passed on. And after that, we lost again. After we lost our father, we then lost my Guru Achari, and then my mother last. This is how we are, and this is who we are, deeply Christian, Chipostori Chiripachiri, and you can't change that. It's a value that I still hold to this day. Alcohol is not a favorite part of me, cigarettes and so forth, because of their upbringing. We didn't indulge that much in that industry, or let alone make it a hobby. So yes, the schools in the villages were not easy. I remember 1977 when I started going to school, the experiences of the war veterans coming to our home, the landmines that we had to deal with, until that point where we had to be forced into the protected village. These shaped us quite a lot. It toughened us. It made us stronger. To make matters worse, even then, it was, very few people then could afford basics. Just like an ordinary family, we also went through that. In fact, my first set of pair of shoes I got from my brother when I was going for secondary school in 1983. Bradley in 83 when I started my Form 1. That's when I got my first pair of shoes. But this was being passed down to me, including my trunk, which I had to use. Going to boarding school was perhaps one of the best opportunities I had. It made me learn a lot of tactics, learn a lot of how to look after oneself. Ordinarily many people detest their children going for boarding school, but I still think it gives the young people lots of values, lots to learn about, how to look after themselves, washing, ironing, looking after your own bed, and also being able to live in a community with others well, build friendships, study hard, and always, the focus was also built through the education.